Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. In today's video we're going to be talking about Rise and Grind 2023. This event is coming in at an A+ tier, but when you look at the talent, this is going to be harder to win than some super major events. We have a bunch of really strong players showing up here from all around the world, and for our top 16 seeds you're going to have Send, MK Big Boss, Chase, and Tarek in 13th, Luis, Anathema, Wrath, and Jackal in 9th. In 7th place, you're going to have Riddles and Kurama. 5th, DeBuzz and Mutes. 4th, MK Leo. 3rd, Tweak. 2nd, Gluttony. And projected to win the entire thing is Mia. So for our first chunk of the bracket, our top seed is going to be Mia, and he's definitely the heavy favorite to come out on top. There's a couple people that I think could get in his way. Honestly, I think his scariest opponent is probably going to be Chase. I think Palutena matches up fairly well into Game Watch. You're also going to have Chase coming from SoCal, and they have some really good Game Watch players from there, but I honestly don't think that Chase is going to make it to Mia because Goblin has a 3-1 record over him, and some of these sets are going to be fairly old, and the last time they played was 9 months ago, so I could definitely still see Chase taking the set, but on paper, you would definitely favor Goblin there, and then Skittles is also potentially a scary opponent for Mia, but he's never really had problems with Young League players in the past, most notably his record versus Suinoko, the best Young League in Japan, is pretty solid, and I would definitely expect Mia to make it to the winners quarterfinals, and once he does, I would definitely favor him versus pretty much any of these 4 opponents. Now, for Kurama Dark Wizzy, I would definitely favor Kurama to come out on top just because he's the best Mario in the world, so I would expect him to win the Mario Ditto. Deathspade Anathema, I'm actually going to heavily favor Deathspade here just because Raw Bayonetta is one of the most unwinnable matchups in this game. It is actually super, super bad, so I would expect Deathspade to come out on top unless Anathema has some crazy good matchup knowledge or has a secondary that I don't know about, but then we're likely going to get Kurama versus Deathspade. Now, this is a matchup that we haven't seen for a long time. Last time they played, I believe, was at Riptide, and Kurama did come out on top, but it was so long ago that's really tough to tell how it's actually going to unfold. Kurama, though, is still going to be the favorite player in there just because he has a lot more reps under his belt at the top level, and the only time they played, he did take it, so we're going to have him versus Mia, and Kurama Mia, I would definitely favor Mia going into that matchup. I just don't think that Kurama, or rather Mario, does super well versus Game Watch, and it's not an unwinnable matchup by any means, but I would definitely favor Game Watch going into it, and also Mia has been like a top 3, arguably top 2 player in the world these past couple months, so my mic cut out right at the end there, but I'm pretty sure that you got the basic message. Mia is going to be my favorite going through, and I do think that Chase has a chance versus him because the matchup's fairly good, but that's if he gets to him. Editing proof block here, it should be worth noting that in Meister's most recent Game & Watch matchup chart, he does have Palutena in the even tier, so doesn't really change what I'm saying because Chase still has a ton of experience versus Game Watch. It's not like Palu does bad versus Game Watch, but maybe not as favorite as I made it out to be. Our next top seed is going to be MK Leo. Now, this is a bit of an interesting one because we don't really know how well Leo's going to be playing at the events that he was going to in Mexico. I was pretty impressed by his play, especially at the latter two. The Hooters event wasn't super great, but you know what? That was the warm-up, and the two after that, he actually looked pretty exceptional with the Jokers, so I would have him as the favorite versus both Geist, Tarek, and Nico. For Geist, Leo is one of the best players in Smash 4 versus Bayonetta, and Bayo is definitely a different character in Smash Ultimate, and I don't think Leo has many reps versus most of the top Bayo players, but I would expect him to have at least the basics down, like the SCI, which is a very important thing versus Bayonetta that a lot of people just kind of fail out the gate. So I would expect MKLeo to come out on top there. Now for Nico, he plays against Spargo all the time, which is literally the best cloud in the world by a significant amount. No offense to Nico, but Spargo's top 3 in this game. So I would expect Leo to win that one. And then for Tarek, Leo actually has a really good Greninja. We saw it a ton in the quarantine era of the game, as well as his Cosby knowledge being very good. So I don't think he's going to get caught off guard by Tarek. And though Tarek has been super impressive as of late, I would still favor Leo going into that matchup. Then who is going to meet Leo is maybe a little bit more interesting because I think Mutes is definitely the favorite to get there, but he has to play against Sonido, and Peach versus Sonic is not a super great matchup, and also Sonic is just a really scary character in bracket, and Sonido is one of the best Sonic players in America. Doesn't get a ton of credit, but he is insanely good at this game, so that's definitely a possible upset. And then Mutes versus Luis. Now, they've only played twice, and that was going to be both times at the Lit Invitational. Mutes did end up taking both sets, one of them Game 5, one of them Game 4. So it's definitely something that Luis can win upon, but since we don't have a ton of information and Mutes has won their only recent encounters, I'm definitely going to go with Mutes to win that one. But I do believe that Luis, when he's playing exceptionally well, can be the player of Mutes' and MK Leo's caliber, but we're going to have to see, is he playing at 100%? And then you're going to have MK Leo versus Mutes, and they've only played in Genesis, and it's really, really tough to tell how Mutes is going to do against someone when the last time he played them was at Genesis because he was playing like the best player in the world at that event, and even when he was MK Leo still came out on top, and I don't think that he's going to try the buy-off like he did in the first set. I'm pretty sure he's just going to go solo Joker there. And Leo is definitely going to be the favorite, but Mides, he's done it in the past, he can do it before, but he's going to have to be playing exceptional. Next up, our top seed is going to be Gluttony, and he's got a pretty interesting bracket because he's got Captain Crop, and I'm not too worried about that one, even though I've been very impressed by Captain Crop when I've seen him at sub. Gluttony has an insanely good record versus Ogi, but also he's an insanely good record versus everyone in Europe, so maybe that's not the best metric, but I would still favor him versus Captain Crop. Then he either gets Send or Jazo. Now, Gluttony, he's lost to Gact a lot in the past, but also he's got a 28-1 record versus Pew, so maybe that's not a super great metric. Jaws, though, he struggled a lot versus FGC characters. I think there's a real possibility of an upset there, but he's become a lot better at that recently, and also his SDI's just gotten a lot better because he's finally been able to do it, because I think a lot of his hand issues have been getting a lot better, which is, you know, obviously super nice, so maybe not as big of an issue as it has been in previous encounters, and I would still favor Gluttony versus both Send or Jazzo, but they could definitely be scary matchups. And then who's going to play him is going to be, in my opinion, Riddles. He's got Chunky Kong first, and listen, Chunky Kong, very, very good player. Riddles better not lose that matchup. I don't care how good Chunky Kong is. It is Kazuya versus Donkey Kong or Terry versus Donkey Kong. You should be blowing that character out of the water, and I do expect Riddles to do so. Then he's going to get either Base Mage or Jackal, most likely Jackal, and Riddles and Jackal, they've only played twice before, and they both went into each other's favor, and by that I mean it went one set to Riddles, one set to Jackal. I don't know why I said it like that, but Riddles did win their last encounter at LSI, and I would expect Riddles to win this one, but I'm not super confident in it, to be honest. It's kind of like 60%, 40%, because Jackal's a player, especially when he's playing well, just destroys people, and he'll run over a character like Kazuya if he gets his hands on him, so I think that's a scary match for Riddles, but I would favor him. And then if we get to Riddles Gluttony, I would expect Riddles to take this one. If you look at their record, overall, you're going to have Riddles winning their last 3 encounters, one of them with Solo Terry and one of them with Kazuya, and this one, I don't know what character it was, but it doesn't really matter because he shows that he can do it with the other 2 characters, and the only time he lost was at Congo Saga, which was post-quarantine, so who even cares, or pre-quarantine rather, so I think Riddles is definitely going to be the favorite going in, but as I just mentioned, Gluttony's SDI has become a lot better recently, which is definitely a problem versus the FGC characters, and also Gluttony has just been phenomenal these past couple months. I mean, he literally hasn't lost an event since Battle of BC. He's looking like a top 5 player in the world right now, and we just haven't really seen a ton of Riddles, so maybe I shouldn't have Riddles as the favorite, but just going off the previous history, I'm going to give it to him. And our final top seed is going to be Tweak. His first opponent is likely going to be against Missing Grey Cat, and for anyone who doesn't know who that is formerly Stroder, so there is a plethora of characters that could come out in this matchup. It's honestly kind of tough to predict what the exact head-to-head is going to be, but I'm going to say that Tweak does take that just because his results as of late have been really, really strong, so I'm going to say that he comes out on top there. Then you're going to have MK Big Boss or Lima, and Lima's definitely going to be my favorite there, as I already mentioned with Anathema and Death Spade. Bayonetta Rob is an incredibly bad match for Rob, and the last time that Tweak and Lima played, Lima did come out on top, and honestly, this is kind of the point where Bayonetta became a super relevant character in the meta, so I would expect Tweak to be a lot better at the matchup nowadays because Bayonetta has just become so much more prominent, and I would favor him versus Lima, but that's definitely a scary draw for sure. Then you're going to have DeBuzz versus Lancelot and Wrath versus Shattuck. Now, for DeBuzz, Lancelot, I'm definitely going to favor DeBuzz here. He has been a top 5 player in America these past couple months, and no offense to Lancelot, but he is playing Chrom, and I don't think DeBuzz is going to be losing to no Chrom. Then they're going to get Wrath and Shattuck, and this is a pretty interesting one because I actually think that Corrin does pretty well into Sonic, not winning by any means, but I could definitely see that matchup being even, but regardless of who makes it, I would expect DeBuzz to beat both players. Link DeBuzz is really good versus Sonic. His patient playstyle just kind of plays into the character, and he's also really good versus Corrin, and I think he has a 2-0 record versus Shattuck overall, so I would expect DeBuzz to beat both of those players. And then for Twig DeBuzz, this is a very interesting one because these guys have only played a single time in 2023, and that's going to be at Gommel. It went Game 5, and Tweak did end up taking that, and that's pretty much their only recent encounter, so we don't really know who's going to win it. Like you can see, the last time they played before that, Tweak was going Wolf, and it has been a long time since we've seen the Wolf come out. Honestly, it's not unquestionable that the Wolf comes out versus the Olimar, though I do imagine that DeBuzz will be starting Rosalina just because that's been his strongest character by far for these past couple of months, so I don't really know who's going to win that one, but considering that Tweak did take it at Gommel, I'm going to have him as the favorite. And as per usual, we're not going to be taking a look at the losers bracket just because it's so insanely fickle that a majority of these matchups aren't going to happen. And what I've done instead is I've taken the 20 players that I think are most likely to top 8 this event, and I've given them the percentages. You're going to have Mia, Leo, Riddles, and Tweak. These are just the people I take to top 8 through the winner's side. Then you're going to have Gluttony, Dabuz, Kurama, and Mudace. Now for Dabuz, and especially Gluttony, I would be pretty shocked if these guys didn't top 8. I just don't have them in this tier because I think that Riddles is going to be Gluttony and I think Tweak's going to be Dabuz. But I would be, especially for Gluttony, very surprised if he didn't manage to get into the top 8. Same thing, honestly, for Kurama and Mudace, just a little bit less. And the Mudace is kind of tough because we just don't really know how he's going to play at any given event. And speaking of someone that we don't know how they're going to play, you look at this next year, you're going to have Wrath, Luis, Jackal, Tarek, and Chase. Now, Wrath is a massive wild card going into this event because we just don't get to see a ton of him offline. I would have him as the third best Sonic in the world because you're going to have Ken at second and obviously Sonic's at first. And Wrath has been training a lot with Sonics. I know that for a fact. So I have very high hopes for Wrath coming into this event. Luis, Jackal, Tarek, and Chase. These are all players that when they're playing at their best, they can take out top 10 caliber players in this game, especially Luis. When this guy is on a heater, he just looks exceptional. So really interested to see how these players do. I could see all of them getting into the top 8. Then you're going to have the perchance here with Anathema, MK Big Boss, Send, Lima, Goblin, and Deathspade. I think for Anathema and MK Big Boss, there is going to be a little bit of bracket luck needed just because Rob is a character that sometimes you run into Game Watch or you run into Bayonetta, for example, and both Anathema and MK Big Boss are projected to run into a Bayonetta player, which could send them into the losers bracket a little bit earlier than they expected. So I think their brackets are honestly just a little bit tough. And then Lima, Deathspade, I mean, Bayonetta, we've talked about how amazing that character has been these past couple months, and Goblin and Sen, these are players that we've seen some really strong things from them, and I could see them all getting into the top 8, but there's going to be a couple matchups that they definitely want to avoid, like, especially for the Raw players, at least the way the bracket's looking right now. They're going to hope that they don't have to run into either of these Bayos, and then they're going to have the Taste the Rainbow Skittles. Skittles is a player, don't get to see him a ton. Most of his good performances are going to be at the regional level, but I have seen what this guy can do. When he's playing at his best, he can do some ludicrous stuff, and he's got a really tough opponent out the gate in Mia, but if he beats Mia, I could easily see him top ending this event. Now, obviously, that's going to be a very big if because it's a top 3 player in the world, but I do believe it's possible that Skills can pull it off because this guy is phenomenal. And we finally arrived at the top 8. As per usual, we're just going to be talking about the projected seed because these players were good enough to be projected top 8, so I want to talk about them. For the winner's side, you're going to have Mia versus Leo and Gluttony versus Tweak. Now, for Mia, Leo is the heavy favorite for me going into this matchup. Even though we haven't seen anything from Leo recently, and we've seen a lot of very promising things from Mia, Leo's got like 3 characters he can choose from that do really well into Game Watch, and he has an insanely dominant record versus Meister. Now, there is the argument that maybe he's used to Meister's style of Game Watch, and Mia's style of Game Watch is different enough where it kind of throws him off guard. I mean, the best example of this comes from MK Leo losing to Zombo when he's got a bunch of reps versus MK Big Boss, so it could maybe go into Mia's favor, but considering the experience that Leo has, as well as the characters that he has to choose from, I would definitely expect him to come out on top there. Then you're going to have Gluttony versus Tweak. Now, Gluttony is definitely going to be the favorite going into this matchup. As you can see, he's won 4 of their 5 sets in 2023. Now, there is the argument that a lot of their sets have happened at the same tournament. They've only actually played at 3 events, trading sets at KawaiiCon, Gluttony winning 2 at Terra, and then Gluttony winning 1 at Genesis. So maybe a little bit more even than it's actually kind of seems, but Gluttony's still definitely going to be the favorite there. Even if you just take it as events, he still has 3 events where he's been able to beat Tweak, and he's just been super, super strong as of late. So I definitely could see Tweak taking that one, but Gluto's going to be the favorite. On the loser side, you're going to have Kurama versus Mudace and Riddles versus Dabuz. Now, for Kurama Mudace, they've only played 1 time at Summit, and it was an extremely close set where you did have Kurama coming out on top, but I'm going to favor Mudace here. I think Mudace could have been playing a lot better at that set at Summit. I don't think he was playing bad, but I've seen Mudace's ceiling, and even though he wasn't playing at that set was still extremely close, and I'm not going to make the argument that Kurama was playing the best he possibly could at Summit as well, but I think if both these players are playing at their peaks, I would expect Mudace to come on top because both of these players are extremely movement-based players, especially Kurama, I would argue more so than other Mario players, but Peach is just a way better movement character because of float, so you're taking the main advantage of Kurama that's literally built into Mudace's character, plus he's just mechanically a very gifted player. So I'm going to say that Mudace takes it just because I think he's going to be able to match Kurama in the movement game, but it's going to be a really fun set to watch if it does happen, just like it was at Summit. Then you're going to have Riddles versus Dabuz. Now, these guys, overall, Riddles has been winning it, and because of that, I am going to give Riddles the benefit of the doubt and say that he does come out on top, but DeBuzz has a lot of arguments going for him. In these past 4 months, DeBuzz has been playing a lot more Smash than Riddles has, as well as just having really good results across the board. He's also won their last encounter in the grand finals of CEO, so it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think it's going to be an extremely close matchup with a multitude of characters potentially coming out from both players, but considering that Riddles wins it a majority of the time, I'm going to say that he takes it. In the loser side, you're going to have Tweak versus Mudace and Mia versus Riddles. Now, for Tweak Mudace, Tweak has a flawless record versus Mudace, and a lot of these sets are fairly old, so they don't really mean anything. Like, the only one I'm even kind of taking into account is Big House, and that was over a year ago at this point, but you get the general idea. Tweak has had a lot of success versus Mudace in the past with a multitude of characters, so I would expect him to win this time around as well. Then you're going to have Riddles versus Mia. If it was DeBuzz versus Mia, DeBuzz would definitely be the favorite going into that matchup because I think Rosa does pretty well versus Game Watch, and also DeBuzz just destroys Game Watch players. But for Riddles, Kazuya and Terry do not do as well versus Game & Watch, and Riddles has managed to take a set off of Mia in Delta 4, but ultimately Mia did win that tournament versus him and also has beaten him at other tournaments, so I'm definitely going to favor Mia going into that matchup. Riddles has demonstrated in the past that he can take it, but overall his characters just don't do super well into him, and Mia has a pretty good record versus him. And we have our top for Leo versus Gluto in the winner's side and Mia versus Tweak in the loser's side. Now, for Leo Glutony, a majority of their recent encounters have been going into Glutony's favor, and by a majority, I mean all of their recent encounters, Glutony has been winning. Now, the sets themselves have been extremely close almost every single time, but Glutony has just been clutching at every single encounter, and he also just has a lot more reps under his belt as of late, where MKLeo has been largely absent, so I'm going to say that Glutony is the favorite going into that one. Then you're going to have Tweak versus Mia. Now, I'm going to say that Mia comes out on top here. Overall, I think Game Watch is good versus both Diddy Kong and Sephiroth. It's not unwinnable matchups by any means, but I would have Game Watch as a slight favorite versus both, and they did play fairly recently at Smash, where Mia did end up taking it, so I'm going to say that he wins that one. So in the losers finals, you're going to get our rematch of Mia versus MKLeo, and basically the same things that I said earlier on. The amount of experience that Leo has versus Game Watch, as well as his characters versus Game Watch, I would definitely have him as the favorite here. And then in the grand finals, again, exact same thing. Maybe Glutony ends up dropping a set because the sets have been extremely close between Leo and Glutony, but I do imagine that he secures the tournament just because he's been doing it pretty much all of their last encounters. And for anyone curious about the actual head-to-head versus Leo and Glutony, Gluto has won their last 4 encounters, and a lot of them are going to go to the Game 5, but he's coming out on top versus the Aegis, the Violet, and the Joker. And I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. To be honest, I think any of the players in the top 4 could take this event. Even a couple of people outside the top 4 I think could take it. But you have Mia versus Glutony. I would favor Mia to take that one, even though they've only played a single time and Glutony did win it. I think Mia is probably going to be a lot better at the Warrior matchup come this time around. But then let's say you have Mia versus Leo in the grand finals, where I would expect Leo to win that one. But Leo versus Tweak or Glutony, I would expect Tweak and Glutony to come on top. There's just so many people that could win this event depending on who they meet in the grand finals, which is going to make it an absolute banger to watch. And I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the support. It's been absolutely unreal as of late. Be sure to sub, all that yada yada. And if there's something I left out, a player that I forgot to mention, or if you just want to say hi, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.